So on Saturday, I got a piece of mail that I was actually really excited to get. I got a jury summons. So I've always wanted to serve on a jury because of the fact that it would allow me to learn a lot about the other part of our justice system. But the excitement ended once I opened it and read it. So if you get picked for jury, you have to show up every day. You don't get a choice. You don't get to choose to be on a jury. It turns out that the very system of our government that is supposed to be creating justice is creating injustice every day, just in their very day-to-day operations. So I've been thinking about this thing, and it turns out that the way the system is, it is forced servitude. It forces you to serve on a jury. You don't get a choice. You don't get to say, well, I don't want to serve. And that makes me wonder, how is it that the courts get to violate the Constitution that states that there shall be no forced servitude? So they're creating injustice just to create justice? How are you supposed to have any faith in the system if the justice is creating injustice? That's fucked up. And furthermore, they choose you. You have to show up and you have to sit there potentially day after day after day on this jury. And they don't even pay you minimum wage. So the state and the county are violating federal law that mandates that you have to get paid minimum wage. First, they force you to do it, forced servitude, and then they don't even pay you minimum wage. This is a problem. I believe that the Supreme Court and the Constitution is the absolute rule of the land, because the Supreme Court makes case law that cannot be challenged past that unless the Supreme Court takes up the case again and reverses their decision. And then there's the Constitution, its actual wording. And the two together create the absolute rule of law and the interpretation of law. And if that's going to be absolute, how is it that our legal system and our laws are violating the absolute rule and law of the land? This bothers me, especially as an autistic person, because autistic people need absolutes in order to understand the world that we're in and be able to make sense of it. And so when there are exceptions to the rule, this is hard to understand. So for me, I now have mixed feelings about this summons. I want to serve, but this doesn't say, if you want to serve, come on down and you can volunteer. No, it says, either do so or we're going to throw you in prison and ruin your entire life if you don't show up because of the fact that you don't get a choice. I thought that slavery was over, but it turns out there's still forms of slavery in our system, because any kind of forced servitude is, in my opinion, slavery. Which makes me really, really wonder why this is still standing, why this rule still stands. So then I thought about it some more and thought, well, what about in the area of the law that deals with contracts? Because people are going to say this is a contract with society. You fill out your voter registration card, and in exchange for your right to vote and exercising your right to vote, you have to potentially serve on a jury. And I found a problem with that legal argument. Is nowhere in law dealing with contracts can you sign away your constitutional protections in order to exercise your constitutional rights or freedom? So how can you make the argument that it is a contract with society and therefore forced servitude is valid and legal and just? You can't. You cannot make this argument. So if you have any legal knowledge on this subject of why this is, comment and let me know, because I'm always wanting to learn more about our legal system. And more importantly, I like to learn about our legal system for I can learn how to fix and undo injustices. Yes, the rebel in me loves to go after the system when the system contradicts itself. Because I firmly believe that these little teeny injustices and these little teeny contradictions in the system and in the legal system are the reason why we have large injustice in the United States. Our system is corrupted and we have all these problems, but we have these problems because the general population does not stand up for little injustices. They will stand up for a very large injustice, but it is the little injustices that allow for those large injustices to exist. And so if you're going to stand by and let these little teeny injustices exist and stand, then you are creating the problem. Because by the mere act of complacency and failure to act, when you have the ability to act, then you are creating the problem. Because you are creating the catalyst for large injustice and other people to be harmed or treated wrongly or unfairly. You create a system by your failure to act that is by its very nature the things you don't like. So for me, I stand up for every little teeny injustice that I have the possibility of actually trying to stand up for. And I may not succeed more often than not, but in my very protest of it, in a way that is standing up for what I believe in, because I'm not being silent. And I'm not going to let other people silence me. And by putting my ideas and my opinions out there, someone soon or 40 years from now may read it or watch that video and may get that idea or that thought, and it may inspire them. And in that way, I can make change without directly making change. Because politicians and lawmakers are shallow for the most part. There are some really great ones, but for the most part, they are shallow. And if 20% or 10% of the people they're supposed to be representing or helping show up at their door upset, they're going to get moving on it. Because the one thing that lawmakers really pay attention to is that if too much of the people they represent is upset, then they're not going to donate to their next campaign. So by being upset, by being a person that speaks out whenever there's a small injustice or a large injustice, you're helping create change. Because lawmakers and people in power and people with great wealth, their biggest weapon against the general population is your willingness to be ignorant on a subject or your willingness to be complacent. So I have a plan for my summons. When I go down and they ask, is there any reason why you can't serve? I'm going to say, because the Constitution forbids forced servitude. Putting it on court record that I wasn't there on my own terms, that I didn't choose to be there. And if I get picked, then this gives me the ability to have legal grounds. And this legal grounds gives me the ability to try to cause waves and try to maybe get somewhere, because I would then have legal grounds that they violated labor law and they violated the Constitution. And it may not go anywhere. And it may just give me good legal grounds to argue another video online. Or I may be able to get organizations like the American Civil Liberties Union or some private attorney that's not part of a large law firm to take the case and challenge the system. So I'm having mixed feelings about this now. I want to serve, but I can't stand the injustice of the justice system. So write to me, let me know your comments, let me know why you feel, or if you know, why this is the status quo and why it hasn't been overturned by the courts. Let me know. I really want to know. I'm always trying to expand my legal knowledge. This way I can be a royal thorn in the side of the legal system that is constantly creating its own problems and its own injustices. Y'all have a good day or night or whatever.